Okay, so this is a brief tutorial on how to do some basic editing on Photopea, and I just want to show you, I'm not showing you everything here, but you can see I'm at Photopea or photopea.com. Over here on the side can be advertising. When I sized my window it went away, so that's interesting. But anyway, the very first thing that you are going to do, this is primarily for my students, but it can be helpful to other people as well, is you're just going to open from your computer. This is for editing an existing image, an existing photograph. So I'm just going to show you, I double click there. This is going to the last place I went. I have a folder that's full of sample photos, just random things to edit. And so I'm just going to go down to, this one is drawing my eye right now. No particular thing. So this is based off of, is very similar to Photoshop and the controls in Photoshop. So if you get to know this and then you transfer over to Photoshop, you'll feel like it's pretty similar. A lot of photo editing apps are more and more copying Photoshop as much as possible. So the good news for you is that Photopea is free, does not cost what Photoshop does, and so you can do some pretty good editing with this. So the first thing that you want to do that I've noticed playing with Photopea is if sometimes you can click around. Oh, see what I just did? So this, they're calling it the background. This is, I'm not going to teach you anything about layers. I'm going to help you keep it really simple. So we'll be editing this, we'll be saving it as something different. You always want to save as something different in case you want to do something different with your photograph. So I'm just going to tell you that. But if you've done something, and like right now, if I tried to do some kind of adjustment, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do. Like I clicked on that, but it's not giving me anything to do. It's because this has been deselected. So make sure that you can see this little dotted line around if you're trying to do some adjustment, something, and you're not getting what you think you should be getting. Check this little guy over here. This is like your layers. Like I said, we're going to keep it simple and just work with one layer. So the first thing that I would always suggest that you do is you consider cropping. So this is our crop tool over here, and when I click on it, some things have changed. You can notice the screen changes. There's a lot of different things we could play with here. Like I said, we're keeping it simple. So I'm going to just stay on that crop tool. So in this, I can look at the image and decide what would what makes sense to keep it in, take it out. When I was shooting this, I see that I've got this comes over real tight here. I'm not sure I would want to come in here, but this little booger right there is sort of distracting me. I could just start dragging this around and doing some different things. You can see those numbers that are showing up are how many pixels wide and high my image is, so I can kind of keep track of it that way. I want to look at, so here I've got, this is a free, so this means that I can make any shape I want. I kind of like to keep some kind of a fixed ratio, and you'll see here we've got some standard aspect ratios. A lot of times I'll stick to original unless I have a really good reason not to, but I could show you, so like a 1-to-1 ratio is a square, 4:3 is what this photo was taken in, 3:2. So these are just some standard ratios. Actually, that's not half bad. So now I can kind of drag. I'm just kind of clicking and dragging. And this thing up here that was bugging me is no longer there. I kind of like how the rocks are here. This little thing is coming pretty much right down to the corner. It's always kind of an interesting thing. Oh, and this has hit here. So I'm going to just call this good. So to move on, I'm going to come over here. You'll see as I hover, it says confirm. So this is, or I could cancel. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm that edit. So now my image is a little bit cleaner. I've got fewer distractions on my edges. So that's what I'm looking for. The next thing that I'm going to want to do is start adjusting the exposure aspects. If I were going to work in black and white, I would change it to black and white now, or desaturate. And the way I do that is I go to image, I go to adjustments, and then I have a lot of different options here. Let's see. And I may have just gone one step farther for the desaturate. Oh, nope, there it is, down here. So I had to scroll down. Desaturate. I just clicked on it, and boom, now I have a black and white image, and I can start tweaking with contrast and all that. But today I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to show you instead, like if you do something, you're like, oops, that's not what I wanted. I can go to edit and undo, and now I'm back to that lovely color image. So I want to go back to my image, adjustments. There's a couple of different ways to adjust similar things. I'm going to try to keep it simple for you. So in Photopea, brightness and contrast is a great thing. So this pops up right on top of my photo. So helpful. So I'm going to scooch it over here and try to keep it still in my frame. So now you can see there's a preview button checked. That's default. So I can play with my brightness and I can see what it's going to do, and I can play with my contrast. And you can see that it starts to make my image pop a little bit more. And maybe I don't want it quite that bright. I think this is pretty well exposed. So these are like if we're working in a black and white dark room, brightness is exposure, contrast is taken care of in the darkroom by contrast filters. Color darkroom, it's different, but we don't have contrast so much. But this is what I want my photo students to really concentrate on, is keeping it simple, not going crazy and trying to, I mean, start simple. This is the best place to start simple. But something I want you to see. So I could click OK, and it would save this in my edits, or I could click reset. So I'm going to do that to show you there's another way to do this as well. So I'm just going to close this out. And here you can see this is like my history of the different things that I have done. So back in image, adjustments, the next favorite thing that I'll say, actually what I would do as much more likely, is curves. So this brings up our histogram. So just as a reminder, on this side of the histogram are my dark shadow tones. On this side of the histogram are my brights and highlights. So that's what these are. And then this tells you how many tonal values. Like you can see, this is, there's not a whole lot of darks, there's not a whole lot of brights. You can kind of see that here. So I can click on this diagonal line is what I'm looking at, and I can click on that and I create a dot, and I can kind of make my brights a little bit brighter, and then I can come down here and click and pull this down, and I'm making my darks a little bit darker. I'm effectively increasing my contrast, and I can move these little guys around, and you can see again with the preview button I can see what's happening here. And we're getting this so by manipulating the whites or the highlights and the shadow tones, we're doing things to the image. So traditionally a nice kind of gentle S-curve is generally preferable. Now if I had something in the middle that I felt like was really crucial, I could click that and I can add another element to this curve, and you can see kind of what it does. So I've brought some of those middle tones down while keeping those highlights up there, not letting these get too black. You'll also notice as I'm adding, as I'm taking away brightness, kind of I am effectively saturating those colors a little bit more. Just something to be aware of. And we can come back to our saturation. So even if I've done something that kind of feels like it desaturates it or makes it a less colorful, I can come back to that. So anyway, at this point I can again reset or click OK. Instead of playing with it more, I'm going to say OK. All right. So the next thing that I'm going to show you that you're probably not going to do a whole lot with is adjustments in color balance. So this is effectively your white balance. So color balance, white balance. There's 3 channels of color. This is like working in the color darkroom. So we have these same controls: cyan, red, magenta, green, yellow, blue. These are our primary and secondary colors in color light theory, different than pigment. And I'm going to show you what you can do. So if you're looking, so cyan is blue, okay, a blue-green color, not actually blue. Red is red, the opposite of cyan. And I can hit reset to kind of zero that out. Magenta and green are opposite. So magenta and red are similar but not the same. So there's pushing it to the magenta side, pushing it to the green side. Again, not going to play with that. And then finally yellow and blue, which is our warm, cool, probably the thing that you're most used to seeing the color temperature that affects. So like our golden hour is more yellow light, our the blue hour is more blue. Funny how that works. And if your white balance, say like you're shooting in golden hour and you left your white balance on auto, you might want to add some of that yellow back in. This was not taken at that time, and the color balance for this photograph is pretty accurate. So I'm not going to change those. And in general, I'm going to tell my students, go ahead, you're probably not going to be playing with this a whole lot, but I wanted to show it to you. So I could click OK, except I haven't changed anything, so I'm just going to back out of it. The other color adjustment is that I want to introduce you to. There's a lot of different ways, but like I said, we're keeping it simple. So hue and saturation are a little bit different. So hue is going to shift those colors around in that color wheel. Again, so it just all of the colors like move over to the side. Little funky thing for my students. This is not something I want you to do. We're not interested in playing this way. And lightness is affects the tonality of the colors. It's another adjustment I don't want my students playing with, but you can see it's sort of like a brightness thing. Lightness, brightness, but slightly different. Reset. So saturation, so this is where our colors are more intense, or we can make them less intense. And sometimes I will push saturation just a little bit, but instead of doing it with the saturation button, you saw when I adjusted my light and tonality, it already kind of pushed itself a bit. So again, not something that we're going to get deeply into. We're going to do a lot of pretty straight stuff for this class, trying to learn how to make the camera do the most we can. But this is a basic beginning introduction to the some of the different ways that you can change, make edits and change your photos. Finally, I'm going to show you vibrance, which is a lot and interesting. In Photopea, you have vibrance and saturation, and you could just go here, leave the hue saturation one alone. So vibrance does the same thing, makes colors more intense, but more of your pastel colors, like these here. See if you can see, that's not zeroed out. Alright, use the old reset button. Saturation takes the more intense colors that are more intense, and you can see that those lighter colors are less affected. So that's kind of showing you around those different color edits. So the last thing I want to show you is some real basic burning and dodging, and you may be like, what the heck is that? So if you have an area, especially on the edge that's like super bright, say something, everything looks great, but there's one spot that, you know, I wish this right here was darker. I don't, because this is a nice tonal value. Or I wish this right here was a little bit lighter. I do have a tool here. Not my blur tool. I feel like I just, nope. I must have clicked it to do something different and made it look different. Spot healing. So here's how we go. What do we have here? Brush, not my gradient. Oh, this is too funny. Is it in my gradient? No, it's not. There are other fun things we can do with that. Oh, here. No. This is funny, because I know that I had it. Here we are. The blur tool also hides our burning and dodging. I knew it was around in here somewhere. We're not going to play with blurring or sharpening or smudging in my class. If you want to play with that, cool. Don't do it for what you're turning in. So dodging and burning are the two tools that we use to make a specific area darker or lighter. So a dodging tool will make it lighter. So we're playing with the exposure. 50% is a whole lot. Midtones, we can choose to affect midtones, shadows, or highlights. A lot of times, if it's the dodging tool, we want to make something lighter. We have shadows that are really too dark and too black. So that would be the shadows. This little thing here, that's the size of my brush, and 15 pixels is super tiny, and it would be really hard to see. So I clicked on that. It would be really hard to see what changes were happening. So, and you can see if I do this, we're going to get, and I bring this over here, you can see the size. Hardness, this is talking about the edges of this tool. I want a nice soft. I should not be able to see that you have done any burning or dodging. And go, oh, I see the lines where you did that. Also, I'm going to say 50% is a lot, but I'm going to kind of show you what it does. So down here in these shadows, and I could click here and then makes that go away. So now I'm clicking and dragging, and you can see how light that is. That is way too much for my students. Edit, undo. So generally you're going to do something much more subtle than that. Try 10%. And so now I'm going to come down here, and now it's just a little bit lighter. Just a little bit. Now that's not something that I needed to do down there, so it still kind of looks funny. But if this were really, really black, like in this area here, it just kind of like lightens it up and lets you see texture. Again, I'm going to edit and undo, and I did it twice. So we're going to undo. You could also come back over here, like now I've added it. I've added that. I could jump up here and go back to my curves and get rid of it. So there's almost always more than one way to do something in these programs. And now I want to take you back over here. I want to show you the burning tool. So burning, when you burn something, it gets darker. Again, we have the same size. Oh, we're back to the itsy bitsy size. Thanks. It didn't keep it. Again, I don't want a super hard edge. I want a soft, blurry edge so that it's much more subtle where I've begun and where I've ended. You can see, oh, see, this is the super soft. Somewhere in this, you know, kind of mid-range is fine. And 102 pixels is way too small. You can see my circle there. So say I wanted this area down here to be darker. This would be perfect for this. So I'm going to show you what 50% looks like, which is going to be, oh, in this case, oh, I'm doing midtones. That's the other thing. Actually, that's not too bad if I wanted to do that. I'm going to go back up to burn. If I do highlights, because sometimes it's just the highlights, now you can see we've got this gray thing going on, and that's where 50% is way too much. So if I were going to do it, I would want something again much more subtle. The goal is to control tonal values without making it obvious. At least that's our goal right now. So now I could kind of come through here and make this a little bit darker, and it's very subtle. And I could, if I felt like I needed to, I could build that up. Actually, I feel like that's not a great thing for this image, but I wanted to show you how that works. I probably should have chosen an image that needed to be burned. Oh well. And then finally, saving. So I've got my cropping, my exposure and tonal values, my color, taking care of any places that are too light or too dark, and then finally I am going to export as, and just because you're probably shooting in JPEG because you're beginners, you could export as something else, but JPEGs are the preferred way to get an image. And then I'm clicking and it's not, oh, there it goes. So now I can tell it the name. So like one of the things that I like to do, and this is not properly named, do as I say, but I'll add the word edit to it. This is where I can also change the size. So if I wanted to print it, I would save it here. I can also determine the quality, which will affect the size of my file. I want you to attach the metadata. And it's not, there it is. So beware, it can sometimes, I clicked on it too many times. I feel like the advertising, maybe depending on this, oh my gosh, too many clicks. There we go. we'll leave it in sRGB. That's not super important for my class one way or the other. Again, I'm not going to try to explain all of this. If you want to learn way more, you're going to take the next class. So this is how big my image is, and is it going to tell me? Let's see, when I click here, then does it choose it's just putting it in my downloads. That's right. And so later I'm going to have to come back and take it out of my downloads and put it where I wanted. But let me also show you. So we can also at this point make a small version. So export as JPEG, wait for the system. Now I would come over here and I put SM for small. In my class, I prefer that you not have anything really huge that you're submitting because this is online. And I just put in the longest one at 2000. If I hit enter, is it going to, and we're linked. There we are. I hit enter, a little bit slow. And now it's not going to be too huge for your classmates to view or for me to view. If it's too big and I'm having to wait for it to download to grade it, it might make me cranky. Don't make your professor cranky. So again, I'm going to save it. These both went into my downloads file, and that is the basics of Photopea. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.